Welcome to TIABC's Voice of Tourism podcast, where we discuss issues that affect the visitor economy with subject matter experts representing private businesses, sector associations, destination management organizations, post-secondary institutions, all levels of government, and other stakeholders. I'm Walt Judas, CEO of the Tourism Industry Association of British Columbia, an advocacy organization that works on behalf of its members to influence government policy and direction. My guest today is Starr McMichael, owner and president of Starrboard Enterprises and a fixture in tourism on southern Vancouver Island. Welcome, Starr. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Walt. It's an honor, especially as you're winding into your next chapter. I'm really honored that you choose me for December.
I always like to get to know a little bit about the person that I'm speaking with. And in this case, you may have been asked this question before. Forgive me for asking it if I'm one of a multitude of people that have done so, but where does the name Starr come from?
Yeah, I get asked that a lot for sure. My father was the straightest guy you ever met, and I was born in 1959. So you might think that maybe he was an early hippie, but he was not. And I don't know the answer, but the name's worked okay for me.
It's a great name. I wished I heard it more, but you're one of the few people that I know with the name Starr, and it just suits you so well. Where's home for you?
Home is in Victoria, British Columbia. I live in Cordova Bay. I was born in Calgary, though, but raised here. And my mom and dad were both born here and raised here, which is unusual. As we know, people come from away here normally.
So where did you go to school? Did you go to post-secondary school as well?
No, it's so funny because you give a bit of a lineup and you say, now, these are the things we're going to discuss. And I thought, well, the education piece will be short for me because, of course, born in 59, I'm 66 years old. And when I went in the workforce, I started working when I was 12. Life was different then, as you are probably well aware. I don't think you're as old as I am, but opportunity was everywhere. I kept working and working and working. And when I graduated from high school, I went to work in the hotel business on the front desk. And I just kept rolling in the tourism industry and didn't stop. I did put my hand into post-secondary for a year and I wanted to work. So I did. But I was always ambitious, so there you go.
But there is some schooling that you took relative to serving as a director of a board.
No question. I've been involved in board work probably for 30 years, and I started to believe that it was getting smarter than I was, as it were, and I was sitting at tables. It's huge responsibility, board work, as you know, Walt. And I felt that if I could get accepted to the Rotman School of Business and the Director's Education Program, and achieve my Institute of Corporate Directors designation, that I would be well served both for the board work I was doing and would also tick a box for me in a way, Walt, because I did never have a formal education. And by anybody's measure, I'd say that I've been very successful, but it did tick a box for me because it's a focus to get through that. And I'm proud of that designation for sure.
What did you learn in that schooling?
Well, through that schooling?
Yes.
Well, they love what they do. There's a lot of role play, Walt. And that to me was wonderful. Of course, what I always knew, you need to be prepared when you come to the boardroom table. You need to do your research. You're not going to just read the material as you're sitting at the table. I learned a lot about listening. I learned a lot about governance. And I'm a governance geek now, I would say. And I would also say that, gosh, the landscape changes so quickly in the boardroom right now. It's crazy. And the responsibility is immense and more. It's just so important that the people sitting around boardroom tables recognize the responsibility of being there because man alive, as my Irish grandpa used to say, it just changes so quickly.
It does indeed. And I would venture to say that more and more people are choosing that direct schooling or director's schooling to become better at being a good board member and to set themselves up for somewhere down the road when they decide to ease out of the full-time workforce into something else.
There's no question. And there's a need for good board people, board members, men and women both, of course. It was interesting. I had an instructor who said that in his experience that a lot of boards were stale, male, and pale was a term I had never used before. I've used it since. And I see that changing and it makes me really happy.
Yeah, I've heard that many times myself. So let's talk about your career. You started in the hotel sector. Tell me about that journey to where you are today. I noted in your bio that you've worked in marine tourism, in hospitality, kind of the full gambit, almost within every sector of tourism. Tell me about that progression.
Yeah, it sort of feels that way. Well, I was very fortunate. I got to start at the front desk of a hotel that is no longer in the New Harbor, the Swiftsure Inn. And it was a great learning for me because I could see that it was an industry that I really enjoyed. And it was at a time in Victoria when CFAX would actually put a note out to ask locals to billet people coming off the last sailing of the Coho at night.
Hmm.
I mean, this was in the late 70s, and it was that we were so well prescribed then, and we think that we are now. And now, of course, my focus is on protecting destinations and making sure there's compression in visitation. I'll never forget that, and we'd all phone each other on the front desk and say, do you have any rooms? Because it's midnight. At any rate, it's a long story, but it was a great start and it was exciting. And there was always somebody new coming to the front desk and they had a story to tell. And I've always been interested in hearing people's stories. Then I went on to get into the marine industry from there. And there was a ship called the Princess Marguerite. She was a beautiful old turboelectric vessel, and she had been rebuilt after the Second World War because she originally sank in the Second World War. She was a supply ship and a first aid ship, and she sank in the Mediterranean. And they rebuilt her over in the Clyde. And the story goes, and I got the job, and I didn't know this at the time, but my grandpa lent Captain Black, who was the skipper that brought her over from Europe, $50 to write his captain's ticket. So I think I was meant to work on board that vessel.
That's a
And
great story.
God, Walt, she was a beauty. She really was. She took 1,550 people, 65 cars.
Hmm.
And what she'd do is she'd leave Victoria every day at 5:30 p.m., sail down to Seattle, night in Seattle, and then come back at 8, arriving about 12:30. And she was fully prescribed. It was a seasonal ship. And I started working on her, and I started out cleaning the heads, and then I became an unlicensed officer. And my husband says to me, who is a Marine pilot, you don't have to tell that part of the story, Starr, but it's an important part because to me, you start somewhere and there's a progression. And if you care to learn and pay attention and work hard, then you can make the progression. And I did, and it was was a beautiful time in my life. I loved that ship very much.
What happened to the ship?
Well, that's the thing. Stena Line bought the whole operation, and the ship was cost prohibitive. She didn't have an elevator, turboelectric vessel. She had 5 boilers. She was expensive to run. There was no question
Yes.
about that. But she should have stayed in the Inner Harbor as a museum or something. And a lot of my fellow crew members, well, many of them fought to keep her here. And I was young and a little bit focused on myself. And I wasn't one of the people that fought for her. I regret that to this day. And I suppose it's sort of, I get goosebumps thinking about it, Walt. It has actually invigorated me to fight for things now and after that I believed in because I
Hmm.
had an opportunity to do it then. And it might not have made any difference, my voice, but I should have put it there. She ended up over in Singapore alongside. I'd hear from people in the industry, they'd see her. Yeah, and they stripped her of everything, of course. And she was full of, oh my God, she was something. I mean, she was just the most beautiful vessel. At any rate, she ended up on a beach in India where they die. And it's a sad death, I think. If you believe in that ships have souls like I do, it was a bit of a sad death.
Yeah, that is really unfortunate. Some of the old vessels, of course, they sink purposely
Yes.
in BC waters. They're stripped of everything, whether they contain asbestos.
Uh-huh.
Obviously, there's no fuel on board, but they become these diving wrecks, which, unbeknownst to many of us, BC is a haven for divers.
Yes.
And being able to access these wrecks has really kind of bolstered our international reputation that most of us don't know about, but the international diver community completely understands. And I wish that would happen a little bit more, to be honest.
I do too. I have to tell you a story about the Maggie because I have a picture on my wall back here of her, and she wants me to tell this story. So when we sailed her down the last night, the captain let us go up onto the Monkey's Island and pull the steam whistle. And you had to actually make an effort to get up there. And she had become close to the end of her days more than once. And you could feel that she knew that this was it. It was really emotional. But we took her down to Seattle. We unloaded everybody and we headed back that night. And in the galley and in the bars and everything, we took everything down and we stowed it all. 22 knots she did. They stoked those boilers up 22 knots.
Wow.
He flew. It was really something. I'm going to start to cry a little bit, actually. I don't talk about this part of my life very much, but I sure am grateful that I had it.
Well,
And
we sure.
And Walt, I just want to say as well, it teaches you how to interact with people, because we nighted every night in Seattle, 24 days on and 4 off. You get to know how to get along with people or not, and hopefully you do, but you learn an awful lot by being in those kind of environments. And it served me well, I think.
Did you eventually become a boater yourself?
Well, we've talked about that a lot. We charter them and take them out, but no. But I did stay in the marine industry for an awfully long time after that. I worked for probably every company that went from Victoria to Seattle. And as I say, a lot of them didn't make it, and it's not my fault. But I learned a lot. And I got to work for international companies, Stena Line, Caverna Fellstrand, Royal Scenic Express, the one that, if you recall, there was the Fast Cats went Victoria, Vancouver, and then Vancouver, Nanaimo. Great learning there. And I ended up working on shore as a manager of passenger services. And, my trajectory was like this because I was ambitious, like I say. And sometimes I was I was very enthusiastic and had to learn on the job. Let's just say that. But I don't mind.
We share a couple of things in common. I worked for the Vancouver Port Authority, obviously well connected to the marine sector, but I also, when I was a very young child in the mid-60s, traveled with my family on the SS United States, which at the time was the second largest passenger liner in the world. We traveled from New York City to Germany, where my family moved, before moving back a year later and traveling on that same ship. And it's still around today in some form. I believe it might be in California. I can't recall. It's moved a bit and became condos at one point. But yeah, that was quite the experience, and it generated a love for me. Even though I was young, I do remember the voyage. It generated a love for me for the marine environment, and now, of course, marine tourism. And I'm well connected through all of my marine tourism members at TIABC. So I can see why you're passionate about the old ship and why it brings tears to your eyes, because those are great memories, great learning experiences that we'll cherish forever.
And when you get to be my age, you start to really count those experiences, because
Indeed.
At least I am on the finishing sort of part of my journey. And I think that it's good to go back and do a little bit of a inventory for the things that really counted. And that ship did. Yeah, she sure did.
No question. Well, I'm on the same journey. As you know, I'm not far behind you in age.
Oh, there you go. We're fortunate.
Now, yes, indeed. After the marine sector, what did you do?
Well, I was very fortunate. I met a man named Don Calvely, and he owned Truffles Catering at the time, and he provided food service to the last vessel that I worked on. And we made a real great connection, and he was very, very bright, very hardworking. And when I decided that I was going to leave the marine industry, he asked me to come and to run Truffles for him. And I had, I'd worked in Whistler and places, because you had an on season and an off season, of course, with the shipping. And I knew from, as an example, you might remember Robin Crumley, who was very well known up in Whistler hotel world. And I got to work for him for a winter. And he brought me in and he said, okay, I need you to run my front desk, but the first thing you're going to do is work in housekeeping for a week. I said, okay. He said, because you need to know that every time you pick up the phone and you ask something from them, that you'll understand the challenges that they've got on their end. So you're going to work through all these different positions. And I mention that because when I came into Truffles, I started to make the coffee and I went into the dish pit and did all those things, because you really do need to understand a business. And Robin shared that with me, and I have utilized that my whole life and my whole career. And it was a successful little business. There was no question. And he and I made a connection and we started to grow the business. And we grew the business to the point where I became a shareholder. And Don always owned a lot more than I did, but we had about a run of a decade where we made some things happen. And we became owners of a destination management company that we created, a brew pub down in the Inner Harbor, with food services out at a local university. And it was a great run for about a decade. And I enjoyed it very much. And it's one of the reasons that I started Starrboard, because I call myself a specialized generalist because I've done a lot of different things. And I've been very fortunate at the time that I was born into the world that you could have opportunity like that. And I made use of all those opportunities, and I wanted to have a little incorporated company that could put its finger in here or there and win by those. And so I did that with Dawn at the Truffles Group, and it was really a lot of fun. We did a lot of good work.
So, what is Starboard Enterprises? Who are your clients? What do you do?
Oh, well, I don't do much anymore, quite honestly. I really don't. I made a concerted effort to remove myself from a lot of business I was doing. But what I do now, and it's my passion play at the end of my career, and my husband laughs. He said, the end of your career, as if that'll ever happen. But I think this is for sure, I'm not nearly as busy as I used to be, and that's a choice. I became a founding partner in Impact Sustainability Travel and Tourism. And that is a conference that is held every year here in January. And Walt, we're so, so grateful that you've involved yourself and you're kind enough to come and lend your expertise to a conference that really gathers people together to have the hard conversations around regenerative business practices and sustainability. And people come in there at a different part in their journey, and they're worried that if they adopt this, they're not going to be financially viable. And I would be too. And so we bring people together to have conversations and to supply tools so they can go away and actually start their journey if they haven't already, or move themselves further along. And Destination Greater Victoria, Starrboard, Synergy Enterprises, and Tartan Bond Communications, we came together in 2017, and we'd all worked together and around each other. And it was for individuals, Paul Nursey, Deirdre Campbell, Jill Doucette, and myself. Our businesses were with us, but it was the four of us sitting around tables. And
Right.
we launched that, and that's the passion play.
So that's mostly what keeps you busy these days?
It really is. I have some board work, but my husband he's now at a place where he is cutting back on work a bit. And I have my big dog called Noble, who is an Irish Wolfhound puppy, who, if he could get in here right now, he would. He's sort of my dream come true. So I'm winding it down, Walt. This is why I said there's got to be more people you could talk to that would be way more interesting than me.
Maybe, but you're interesting in of yourself, Starr. I always wanted to have you as a guest, and I'm glad we're having this opportunity because you do have such a rich story to tell and a long and illustrious career that I think is worthy for people to know about, and you're a real fixture in Victoria and even beyond. Everybody knows Starr, so I'm glad you're joining me today.
Thank you, Walt.
My guest on TIABC's Voice of Tourism podcast is Starr McMichael, owner and president of Starboard Enterprises. So you just alluded to it moments ago. You've chaired the boards and served on different boards, but where you've chaired is the Greater Victoria Harbour Authority as well as Destination Greater Victoria. What are the biggest issues you're hearing about in your work with tourism and hospitality operators?
Well, just as a correction, I was the chair of the Nominating and Governance Committee on GVHA for 2 terms. And I did chair Destination Greater Victoria and the Film Commission for many years, and the Victoria Hostels Foundation. Yes, you're right. I've been in it deep. The challenges that I faced, I don't face them, but they're a concern for me. And it's about leadership, true leadership in the industry. And it's interesting, when I was starting my journey into chairing Destination Greater Victoria, Tourism Victoria at the time, I'll never forget, I was at a function. And in the room were the cast of usual suspects. And there we were, standing in a circle, shoulder to shoulder. And it concerned me because there was a lot of people in the periphery of the room that were not in that circle. And I remembered being in the periphery of the room. And I also remembered that it didn't seem very inviting in that circle. And so at the time, I raised the flag to my compadres in the room. Open up your circle, look over your shoulder, look over the shoulder in front of you. There is your future leaders. We need to start bringing them in. We need to start mentoring them. And that's the thing that is really important to me. And I think that is so important in the industry right now. We need to make sure we have good leaders. We have a lot of, I'd say, challenges. Victoria is a beautiful destination as an example. And we're very fortunate that we have great people leading here in the different organizations, Paul Nursey being one of them. I'm a big fan of his. But he woke this destination up long ago to compression and visitation and to making sure that we don't burn the destination out, that visitor local interface is considered at every turn. That for me is extremely important for all destinations. Am I answering the question?
Yes, indeed.
Good.
You referenced it, and I said it earlier. All communities have similar issues, but Victoria continues to win awards and is a very favored destination, sets record numbers for visitation in specific areas or within specific sectors. So there's lots to like about the destination, and that's why so many people from all over the world regularly visit Victoria as part of their journey to Canada.
Right. Well, and of course, Canada being the operative word there, and perhaps not our neighbors to the south, which is a very, very sad situation, in my opinion. And I won't even begin to expound on that. But no, this destination does very well. And I think it has a lot to do with the leadership at the different organizations. I think it has a great deal to do with innovative business owners. And I think it has a great to do with the fact that the locals, where possible, are brought in to share their thoughts and ideas on what works best for their destination, because we can't do this by ourselves. And as soon as you start to do that, then the disconnect is there. And then you're not creating that environment. And I'm a crackpot Aquarian. I think you have a vibe. And I think Victoria has that vibe, but it's because we're all trying to row in the same direction. Of course, that sounds a little altruistic, but I think that the locals really are brought to the fore and their opinion matters here. It's important.
It is indeed. I mentioned earlier the need for more traditional accommodation in Victoria. Are there other opportunities to build business within the tourism sector? Chances for operators to set up shop, whether it's retail, attractions, restaurants, kind of the full gambit of tourism. Do you see growth potential in Victoria in the years ahead?
Well, I think that the more hotels we can have built, the better. And I know that that's underway. I also believe, our conference center in 2037 is going to change its structure, and we're going to need to look at something different, hopefully bigger and more integrated into the community in a way that may house different sort of, maybe a museum, who knows? I mean, these things are all on the table. We have a great space right now that does attract a lot of people, but we have a cutoff of a certain amount of people and conferences that we can attract here. Now, I'm not answering your question because it's a tough one, because I right away put myself in a business owner's shoes and say, okay, if I want to have a business downtown, I'm going to have to lease a property, and then I'm going to have to insure it, and then I'm going to have to bring employees in to run it. And these are all challenges, in my opinion. Right now, I think it's tough to do business anywhere. I'd like to think that Victoria is a good place, but I see empty storefronts as well.
Is that due to the rising cost of business, or is it about government regulation or financing? What's the gist of the issue there?
Well, Walt, I mean, you could probably answer that better than I could. I imagine it's a bit of everything. A bit of all those things. I think that people have desire. I think it's sad when people put everything on the line to open an operation and it fails for so many reasons. So, it's a tough one. I wouldn't open a business right now myself like we're describing.
Where does AI fit within tourism, in your opinion?
Well, that's an interesting one. My friend Jill Doucette, who has Synergy Enterprise and is also my colleague in Impact, they're just doing work on the carbon footprint of actual AI. And of course, you hear the stories about, gosh, it takes all this power, but it's really fascinating what they're coming up with. And AI, people I talk to are writing proposals. They're using AI. Their media, as far as their marketing, they're using AI at least to augment this. So, I mean, I don't know. It's not going anywhere. It's fascinating, though.
It is. Do you think the visitor experience is changing? Because the visitor experience is not about when you're on site or in a destination. It starts when you're first exploring a place to visit.
Yes, I imagine it is, Walt, because for me, as far as the internet, it's the best thing that ever happened. I'm a frustrated travel agent. And so when I go traveling, it used to be you'd have to mail away for brochures. And if you got lucky, somebody would have some information, and I buy all my books, the Lonely Planet books and stuff. No, I love it. I spend a lot of time online. So yes, I'm quite sure it's changing my experience. I'm sure it is changing others as well.
You mentioned earlier the Impact Conference, which is always a terrific event. And of course, there are now other Impact conferences in other parts of the country that are gaining traction. But the one that originated in Victoria really attracted people from all over the world, largely Canada, but different people coming from different areas with new perspectives and terrific ideas and so on. How have you seen the conversation evolve since 2017 when you first launched Impact to what people are discussing and concerned about today?
Well, one of the biggest things is we talk now about regenerative business practices and the circular economy. We weren't doing that 5 years ago. Well, I mean, we were doing behind the scenes talking about it, but we not bringing it into programming because we just felt that the people's appetite wasn't quite there yet. Because, when I said before that we're talking to people that they're in a different part of their journey. I mean, you've seen that yourself. And so we want to make sure that when we have these conversations, we're not overloading people or scaring them. And so I've seen that change. We speak about that more now, about placemaking, very much more now, certainly about that local visitor interface that we were talking about comes to the fore more. Human resources actually we're talking about that more and more all the time. The summit now held in Victoria, as you said, it was predominantly Canadian in the beginning, and it became a global focus. Now we do have the other impacts. We license them, and we have 3 different countries now interested very much in hosting an impact. That's really important to us because we understand the carbon footprint for travel is great, but we've never really had the bandwidth to host a hybrid conference, because if you don't have deep pockets and you can't do it well, then there's no sense in doing it. And so we just felt that this would be a way to make sure that conversation kept happening. And then to keep it fresh, Walt, all the outcomes from our away impacts feed the programming for the summit so that it stays current. Now, obviously, the things that people are talking about in Atlantic Canada are different than the things that are being talked about in Ontario, let's say, or even here in Victoria. But there's themes that still rise to the top. And so that feeds our programming. I'm not sure that that's a great answer to the question, but we try and keep it fresh.
I was speaking with somebody from Newfoundland who said the term regenerative tourism, or in the case that you used it, regenerative business practices, is not necessarily something that they're discussing in Newfoundland, or at least it's not a term that most people are familiar with, albeit they do practice sustainability. How would you differentiate between the two? Sustainability, regenerative.
Well, I think the term sustainable, people, are still rolling their eyes because it's been around for a long time, and it is a fear factor to it. And it comes again with that financial viability piece. I think regenerative business practices, in my opinion, we give back to the communities we work in. So yes, you can become carbon neutral, and yes, that's very good. And perhaps that's part of your sustainable business practice here. And I'm not the entrepreneur scientist in our group. I'm the cheerleader. For me, regenerative business practices are about including your local community and giving back, perhaps social enterprise. And we've seen that happen too, where you're going to go into a community and you're going to say, well, we're going to do this work, we're going to generate this kind of profit, and we're going to put that profit back into your community in some sort of social enterprise. I think there's lots of different ways to look at it. And I don't even think that the lexicon is complete yet on the description of what regenerative business practice are.
Yes, that's a good point. In all the years that you've been working on impact as a group, from your perspective, who has inspired you? What are some of the most interesting stories, people, or work that's being done on the regenerative business practices or sustainable tourism side of things?
Well, one of the people that has inspired me the most is Robert Sanford, who does our reality check every year and has. And this will be our 9th conference in January, has for 9 years, God willing, another 10 or 11 or 12. And he is a very, very wise man, and I won't even try and give you his title here, but he tells it like it is. And then what he does is he tries to leave us with hope. But what he's pointed out to the tourism community is that we have power because people come to visit, we go to travel, we can see what's going on, we're educated predominantly, and we have conversations, and that we can affect change in how we drive our businesses. He's really something. It's levitation worthy. In fact, every time I send him an email, I sign off with fear and gratitude because he scares the hell out of me. But I'm full of gratitude. You know, Jill is very, very big on bringing in clean tech to all of our conferences. I listen to the clean tech people come, and I know that when she starts talking to them, they say, I'm not in tourism. And she said, are you sure? And of course, aren't we all? Aren't we all in tourism? Really, it's such a huge economic driver. Tourism touches everyone, in my opinion. So the clean tech people really float me. The Indigenous piece lights me up every time.
Yeah.
And I love it.
Yeah, I get so inspired by attending Impact, and I agree with you. The good doctor is always a dose of reality, but he doesn't leave you feeling down on yourself or down on the industry, because he does encourage all of us to participate in solving and resolving some of the current issues that are before us. But one of the things that floats my boat, to use your term, are those companies that are doing such innovative work. It just blows me away how smart people are and the technology that they're deploying to solve some long-standing issues that you have no idea people are addressing. But it is one of the things that I get really inspired about. And I always say to myself, gee, I wish everybody knew that was happening.
Yes, me too. Like I say, we're so glad you come. We're so, so glad you come and you lend your expertise. And you have a way about you, Walt, that I know is going to continue past TIABC and on
I
into
appreciate
some
that.
other wonderful place. But you're a gift to us all.
Thank you, Starr. Much appreciated. So, a couple more things I want to ask you about. You were awarded the CFAX Radio Community Leader of the Year honor. What did that mean to you?
It was hugely, hugely important to me. And it was interesting because it happened about 2 to 3 years after I had sold my shares in the Truffles Group. And I, like many people, am defined by what I do. And when I made that decision to sell those shares, it was a big decision, but it was the right one for me at the time. It was a fork in the road and I needed to do it. And so to be recognized 3 years later by that organization for the work that I had done in the community was it was a great boon for me. I'm very proud of that. And I don't use the word proud too often, but I'm very proud of it.
And you should be. Well done.
Thank you.
So, final question.
Yes.
What do you do for fun?
Well, what do I do for fun? Well, first of all, I'm looking in the camera here and thinking, I thought this was a podcast that didn't have video. I really should have prepared more, but that's okay because it's the truth and that's okay. For
Well, you
fun,
have the greatest hair in the business, by the
yes.
way.
That's it, some postal code, but thank you very much. That's the Irish, I think.
You look terrific.
Well, I wasn't pushing for that, but I do appreciate that. But I really should have been more prepared. You know, Walt, for fun, I have been fortunate to find love in my life. And it was late in my life. I didn't meet my husband until I was 37. And I thank God every day for that, every day for that. And so as long as I continue to have him, and we all know that these things can change, I'm full of gratitude. I have my dream come true dog and my Irish Wolfhound. You'll laugh. My husband said to me, I didn't know you wanted an Irish Wolfhound. I said, I always like unicorns. I didn't know you could have one. So we have that. And
That's good.
we get outside and we travel and a lot of exercise. And, you know, just I lead with gratitude, Walt. That's who I am. And I'm really grateful.
And where do you intend to travel in 2026? Any plans?
Back to the Cook Islands. So the Cook Islands to me are like Hawaii probably was 100 years ago. Beautiful, beautiful, but very interesting destination. The young people leave to go to Australia and New Zealand for career path. and the destination itself could not handle the volume of tourism it needs to actually keep them there and support. So I'm actually trying to get Jill down there to meet with some people who I've connected with to have those hard conversations around destination management. It is the most beautiful place on earth, I've discovered. We're also going to do a river cruise from Amsterdam to Budapest and got a few other things on the go. So it's a big year for 2026, God willing.
Sounds wonderful. You've inspired me to go to the Cook Islands. I've not been. I've heard lots about them, but they don't come up in regular conversation. But now that you reference it and how beautiful it is, I'll put that on my list of places to visit when I pull back from full-time work.
Highly recommend it. The people are, and they bury their family in the front yards.
Why?
I love it. And so then, of course, they don't sell the property to estrangeros because, of course, they can't. That's part of their well, they just don't. So it's a beautiful thing. They can only lease. And so their regulation is that they keep the land to themselves. And that's one way to do it, I guess.
Yeah. Sounds very intriguing. Starr, this has been fun. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much. And take care.
And you as well. My thanks to Starr McMichael, owner and president of Starrboard Enterprises, for joining me on TIABC's Voice of Tourism podcast.
Take care.
Thank you, Starr. Really appreciate it.
And thank you for listening. Please share this episode with your professional colleagues and decision makers to help with our advocacy efforts as we seek to build a vibrant, sustainable, and resilient tourism and hospitality industry in British Columbia. Visit our website at tiabc.ca, sign up for our newsletter, become a member of TIABC, or follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to find out more about our next Voice of Tourism podcast. If you have a tourism policy issue within BC that needs attention, please send me a note at wjudas@tiabc.ca. This is Walt Judas bidding you farewell until next time.